It's a dirty job, but someone has to do it. Testing superbikes. Bikes that cost more than cars. That's our traditional way of telling you how expensive bicycles are. So, which of the superbikes is the most super of them all? The giant Tcr Advanced Sl0 is one of those bikes that if you stop at a cafe to have a cup of coffee and a nice bit of cake and grown men walk up to it and pick it up, it makes them go funny. It's one of those really light bikes. It weighs just 6.14 kilograms. That is obviously below the UCI's 6.8 kilogram weight limit. So if you're a pro rider, you're going to have to bulk that bike up. You can just bulk it up by sitting on it. That's how we did it. The lightness doesn't come from crazy light components. You've got Giant's lightest ever frame set. It's got an integrated seat post, the variant seat post apparently. It also has its own brand 30mm wheels and tyres. They all work really nicely with the bike. The TCR is one of those bikes that just feels as though it wants to go fast all the time, no matter who's on top of it, even people like me who aren't particularly quick. It's even like that on the climbs. I'm a gradient phobe, but on a TCR, I feel like a king of the mountain. It's also incredibly comfortable. Aim it at some slightly rougher roads, some potholes, and it actually soaks up bumps really well. A really smooth, cosseting ride, which is quite surprising for a racy bike. According to one of our main testers, one of our main Superbike testers, Robin Wilmot, the handling on the TCR is virtually telepathic. We would recommend that you use traditional steering methods when riding this bike, but it really does weave in and out, carve through bends. It's lovely to ride, particularly when you're descending. You feel so confident on it. It is a super bike. If you're after a super long name for your superbike, then you can't go too far wrong with the Cannondale Super 6 Evo HM Disc Ortega Di2. Is that long enough for you? It's a disc brake bike, but it's not a heavy disc brake bike as you would expect at this kind of price point. We had a 56mm frame and it only weighed 92 grams more than its rim braked cousin. That is light for a disc brake bike. The Super 6 Evo is a race bike, but it doesn't feel like a race bike. It's got 25mm tyres, which we actually managed to pump up to about 28mm, and our lighter testers were riding them at quite a low PSI, about 85, and that meant that they could just ride willy-nilly into rougher bits of road and even on a little bit of gravel. We wouldn't necessarily recommend this bike for that, but it really did soak up bumps and lumps with an amazing amount of composure. That said, whether you're a racer or not, there's no reason why you shouldn't feel racy when you're on the Cannondale. It's the kind of bike that can shift between being a lovely, comfortable cruiser and a sexy, exciting racing machine in an instant if you want it to. We were a little bit surprised to find that Cannondale's opted for a quick release in the rear of the bike. It's a through axle in the front, as you would expect nowadays with a disc brake. Cannondale say that is for easier access, it's easier to get it out, particularly when you're racing and you get a puncture, but we do like the extra stiffness that you get from through axles on disc brake bikes. The Villiers 110, I don't know the Italian for 10, I do apologise for that, but it's the Villiers 110 Air E-Tap, is a very, very nice looking bicycle. It's an aero bike, so pretty much every bit of it that hits the wind as you're rushing forward is designed to meet the advisory guidelines from NACA, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. I'm not entirely sure which nation that's for, but they are out there and people do design bikes using those guidelines. You've also got an integrated bar and stem, and any cables run internally to obviously help the airflow, and it's got SRAM E-Tap, which means no wires to disrupt the on-rushing air either. As you'd expect, the wheels are aero too. You've got 65mm DT Swiss rims on there. They're 24mm wide, which obviously helps with a bit of aeroness, and the tyres are Vittoria's. They're 28mm wide, so they kind of bulge out to meet the current trend for aero wheel and tyre combos. Despite those very deep rims, the Villiers is actually very stable. Even in crosswinds, we didn't have any problems with those. And it's also, for an aero bike, very cosseting. You've got a decent carbon layup, some drop seat stays, so it's actually really comfortable too. It's got a 50-34 and an 11-28, so we would think that if you were a bit more racy, you'd probably want bigger rings to go even faster, because it is a bike that is fast, it looks great, it feels great. We loved it. Sl0 have a reputation for high performance race machines and time trial bikes, but with the C3 disc, they've done, like a lot of other brands, something a little bit different and decided to create a bike that you can do a little bit more on, that you maybe can take off-road if you get the urge. They've done that by giving it a marginally longer wheelbase. You've got a slightly higher bar position than you would have on a race bike, but it's no shopping bike, of course. You've also got 28mm tyres. There's plenty of clearance for even slightly bigger tyres if you like, or mudguards, and there are some hidden mudguard mounts too. We don't want you to think that Sl0 have gone soft on us though. You're still rewarded with a really direct and positive ride when you put the power through the pedals. You're helped there a little bit by the through axles at both ends, which do increase the stiffness of the bike and mean that it's a really efficient machine when it needs to be. Off the beaten track, the bike feels really solid. It handles really nicely. It's actually got a 7mm lower bottom bracket than is standard on a Sl0, and that does make a little bit of difference with a lower centre of gravity, plus those big tyres means that you do feel comfortable and you feel really assured when you are messing around on rough surfaces. As you'd expect, the Shimano Ortega Di2 was pretty much faultless throughout testing. Well, it was faultless actually. It's allied to a rotor chain set. We did find that caught occasionally at extreme chain angles, and for the money, the bike isn't the lightest available. That said, it's still an awesome all-season all-rounder. We were first introduced to Trek Domani in 2012 and it was very exciting. The reason? It was one of the first of the new breed of road bikes that incorporated a kind of suspension into its frame. It was great. The whole bike was great. But there was one little downside, and it was that the front end didn't quite match the smoothness of the rear end. But now there's an ISO speed system in the fork as well, so the bike is equally as smooth from front to back. What's more, you can actually tune the comfort at the back a bit with this version of ISO speed. Between the seat mast and the frame, there's a U-shaped slider that you can adjust to make the frame a little bit firmer or a little bit softer depending on where you're going to be riding and your preferences. Cushioned and smooth doesn't mean slow though. We think the Trek Domani SLR9 ETAP is actually one of the most effective road weapons out there. Bontrage's 28mm R3 tyres combined with the ALS3 carbon rims give you a nice volume of air, and those combined with the compliance of the frame really increase your cornering grip, and that increases your confidence, it increases your comfort, and in turn that all leads to just more speed. Thanks to the ISO speed systems going on this bike, the Domani is one of those machines that you can happily ride over really rough road surfaces without actually compromising your speed. But that doesn't mean it's a softie. It's on the smooth tarmac that this bike really shines. It feels like the top-end race bike that it is. You could easily win Tour de France's or local crits, or just maybe get close to a few Strava KOMs if you have this bike underneath you. For those of you in the UK and of a certain age, you will probably remember the 1980s Tcr XR4. It's a future classic car, mark my words. The Bianchi Ultra Xr4 is a future classic bike. This is an overtly sexy aero bike with an hourglass head tube and curvaceous fork legs, first seen on the Aquila CV time trial bike. As you'd expect with an aero bike, the XR4 is stiff and probably a little bit uncompromising, but that is so it goes fast. If you've got the legs, this bike is as quick as you can get. We've been lucky enough to test both the mechanical and the electronic versions of the Campagnolo Super Record group set on this bike, and they both work magnificently, as you would expect. For rarity's sake, we would probably go for the electronic EPS. Not many other people are going to have this group set, and it's a joy to use. Yes, the XL4 is, as you would expect, a stiff and very purposeful bicycle. It does have the NASA-developed countervail technology built into the carbon layup. That's said to reduce vibration by about 80%. Okay, it's not like a suspension, but if you go over bumpy roads, it actually reduces the amount of rattle that gets through to your hands, and it seems to work very well. Of course, the XL4 is exceedingly expensive. But then it's a bike that's designed to be ridden by pro riders. It's the kind of bike that they are going to be so happy with. So if you can afford it, is it worth it? Hell yes. Choosing a favourite superbike is a bit like choosing a favourite child. Fortunately, you don't have to do the latter, but I do have to do the former. And in this case, if I actually had the money, I would go for the Trek Domani SLR.